All right, well, welcome to AY After Hours with Doug and Kelly. Today is a very special episode. We have one of our natural gas experts with us, Wally Armstrong, and we're just going to talk through some of his background and what the industry looks like today. So welcome to the show, Wally.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it, and I'm honored to be part of the show. Loved season one and honored to be part of the group of season two. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us virtually. We have only done a couple of these. I don't know if you saw one of our episodes. We were on Coffee with Jim and James, so that was our first virtual experience, and it went well, so we thought we'd give it another shot.
I did see that, and I studied it a little bit because just to do the virtual meetings, we've been doing a lot, obviously, these days with virtual, but to do a podcast virtual, I thought it was fantastic. So
obviously we'd rather have you here with us. However, since you're not, why don't you just give us a little bit of background as far as where you are actually, and kind of a background as far as just you personally.
All right. Well, great. And the accent will probably give it away.
Yes, it does.
I am from up in the greater Boston area in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. So, and I am one of the owners and partners in Liberty Sales and Distribution. We're based out of Hatfield, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. And as you know, we are the Northeast representative for natural gas products for AY. So we have a number of other products that we service in both the customer service end, the corrosion end of the world, and damage prevention. But one of our big flagship lines, obviously, is natural gas and AY McDonald line. I've got two partners in the company, George Rashino, who was the natural gas representative direct for AY McDonald that used to be my salesman, calling on me when I started in the industry at Colonial Gas. And then another gentleman, Chuck Lang, who I ended up working with when I went to left Colonial and went to UPSCO and worked for them for 7 or 8 years. And Chuck is a partner of ours as well. So I'm here up in Boston. My role in the company is sales and marketing for the company and technical support. And it's been a fun time, good time.
And Wally, I can tell from your background that you did not decorate your office. So tell us about your family, because I know you've got to have a better half who did that for you.
Well, there might be a lot of truth in that. You got a better half that dresses me every day too.
Yeah.
So just a little history in the office. I mean, this is my home office. Two partners work out of the Philadelphia office down at headquarters, but I elected to stay here, and it's easy to jump on a plane from Logan Airport as well as it is from Philadelphia. Then I can stay a Tom Brady fan and some of the other Boston memorabilia. So big sports fan, got a lot of different memorabilia from different sport teams in Boston. In the corner of the room, if we panned around, you'd see some AY memorabilia as well, coming down for the innovation summits and some of the meetings. And then there may be a couple of whiskey bottles and after-hour indulgence items that we like to collect as well.
There you go.
So
the one thing that is catching my eye right now is there's some sort of
helmet?
Medieval metal helmet over your shoulder.
All right.
What's that
so
all
that
about?
that is one step shy of divorce. So when we built the office, I've always been into medieval armor and memorabilia, if you would. And I wanted to get a life size. I've got a little spot over in the corner over here that would have fit a life-size mannequin with medieval armor. And I was pretty much told that if that was to show up in the house, I would be extricated and outside looking for the horse to ride out on. So this is as close as it is. It came as a present from one of our associates in the industry, Big Chuck Lang, who found it and said, I'm going to have to send this to you as a present, so this way you can't get thrown out and it can stay there. So that helmet is a real helmet, and it goes back to the medieval days. And at some point in time, I'm going to see if I can piecemeal the rest of the suit.
Very
to
cool.
go with it.
Some marital compromise.
Yeah.
You didn't get the full
exactly.
suit, but you got the helmet, and
This
you
is
got
what
to stay
it
in the
takes.
house.
We know that.
Yes. Yes.
Very
Good.
cool.
So tell us a little bit. Why'd you get into the natural gas business? What do you like most about it?
Well, very great question. I think I was in my seventh year of freshman in college, and Dad came to me and said, "Hey, it might be time that you try to choose a career path instead of this academia that you think you got to go through." So at the time, I was working at Colonial Gas as a technical apprentice, which meant we were college students going to university, and we were college students, and the opportunity came about to become a dispatcher at the gas company. And knowing school really was not, although I had a great time, really was the grades were not probably coming through the way that Mom and Dad were looking for. I decided there was an opportunity because I had worked there for several years as a college student. Great company, really started to understand and enjoy the industry, and full-time opportunity came about, and I took it, probably not with the intention of staying. It was just I needed a landing place. But the more that I started getting into the industry, understanding about what we did in the community, what we did for for energy, if you would, it stuck, and now it's 38 years later.
Wow.
And I'm still here. So I think I'm going to make it a career. I'm not sure if I'm going to move just yet.
You're off to a good start.
Yeah. I don't want to commit 100%.
Well, once you get that knee replaced, maybe you go play for the Patriots. Maybe that'll work out for you.
Yeah, well, we thought that with a jump shot and golf swing, and Dad kept shaking his head saying, not that good, dude.
Oh.
So we, in a previous episode, we did a little bit of Q&A, and Nicole, that's part of our gas team, was on. And we talked a little bit about where natural gas comes from. I don't know if you want to, I think we kind of glazed over it a little bit. We could touch on it a little bit more, but is there anything you want to share just in general about the resource itself?
Well, I think that's for today's environment, right? This is a great question. Energy policy, everything that we've seen. When I first started in the industry, we were a very small player in the energy industry via natural gas. Probably had about 26% market share. Up in the Northeast, we were competing heavily with oil. That was the primary. A lot of electric, and electric was used in many, many cases, which now we're starting to see we want to go back. And believe it or not, now I'm starting to date myself, but in certain areas, wood was the big energy. If you were going to heat your house, you had a relationship with your grandfather, and the grandfathers had relationships with the people that delivered wood to the house, and then even some coal for power generation. So, the industry has taken a big turn. We've seen some things go full circle coming back to the electric side, because we did an awful lot of work converting people from electric to natural gas. And now we're starting to look again, going back to electric again for heating sources, for cooking. So really what's changed in the industry is the idea that electric, gas, natural gas, and oil all competed with each other. Now we've become energy companies. Now a lot of the same players own the major production. We're trying to distribute the same way. We're fighting the same fights, and I say that in a very respectful way. But we have to be fair to the environment. We know that we've got issues that we've got to do with, carbon neutral, and being fair to the to the earth that we're trying to live in as well. So it's been a very interesting number of years as we've gone through this to see where natural gas comes from. Interestingly enough, in the last few years, one other places we have an office is out in the Pittsburgh area, where we have two shale plays out there, the Marcellus Shale and the Utica Shale. Go back to about 2008 to 2012, it looked like the Wild West. It was like the gold rush. Every little contractor that you get in was out drilling and fracking, a term that probably has been maybe not is best used in the industry. And we probably have 100+ years supply of natural gas out in that area that we could be, pulling out, distributing throughout the country, and also exporting as we go through and we start hearing some of the energy issues that are going on today, exporting this to some foreign soils. But again, we have to balance that up with the political climate and what's right. So it's been a very interesting career, an interesting watch to see what's happened. Didn't expect to see this as a young guy coming into the industry and trying to figure out what's going on. It's been a lot of learning over the last 38 to 40 years as we've gone through this.
So just in that Pittsburgh area, there's 100 years worth of natural gas just in that small area. Wow.
It's a very, very, in that process, as you go in and frack and you're pulling the natural gas out, and it goes from midstream companies to transmission companies, and then out to the LDCs that we service most, going to homeowners and businesses. There's about 100-year reserve that was tapped into out there. And then there's other shale, there's probably 3 or 4 other shale areas throughout the country. Okay. So the resources are here in the United States to supply, but it's balancing that up with the environmental side of it, making sure that we're doing the responsible thing as far as when we're fracking, that we're not contaminating any waterways or mineral areas that we rely on as well. So it's about balance. It's a lot about balance as we go through.
Yeah. We recently sat down with a couple coworkers and talked about supply chain and some of the challenges that have happened over the last year or two. I was just kind of curious, what do you feel is the impact the last year or so has had on your business and how you operate in your day-to-day life at work?
Sure. A lot has changed in that area as well. And if you look at supply chain, from years ago, everybody worked for just in time. So just in time inventories were there. Everybody was looking to get everything through. Since COVID has hit, and then some of the tariffs and things coming onshore, we've changed that and had to change that. And we've done it in our business as well. We have to have inventory ready. Right now, there's a lot of long lead times to get product. There's a lot of long lead times to get services. And you ask yourself the question, is that acceptable? How do we make a change? When you're bringing on new customers that are building homes, and who's our customer at the end of the day, right? We always say in AY that the customer is the boss. Well, it's the builder that's trying to build new homes. It's the power plants that are going in. It's the universities that we try to service, putting a meter on it and making sure that they have the resources available. So what we've had to look at, and what we're going to be forced to look at for the next several years, that I believe, is that we need to have proper inventory. That means the businesses have to increase inventory. Liberty has increased. We do an awful lot in the distribution side for the corrosion coatings. And we've increased our inventory values significantly in order to compensate for what we had as just-in-time inventory, now to only have product available when a customer calls, and we try to keep our lead times down. The second part of that equation is just better planning. Mm-hmm. So while just-in-time inventory is great, it keeps the cost down, it keeps cash flowing, but it also breeds a little bit of lack of concentration to how much inventory do I really need? What do I need for my work to be performed? We're starting to change that and work with our customer base to look at that all the way through the supply chain. Not only just our little piece as to who the manufacturers are and then who the customer is, but what are their needs going forward. So it's going to be another learning challenge over the next few years to walk through that side and change some of the ways that we're doing.
Yeah, there's a need to be much more proactive versus reactive with the current state of things.
Absolutely.
We talked a little bit about planning and forecasting, and not that that's an easy thing, but more important than ever, probably.
Yeah. And, you talk about some of the changes that you've had to go through. If you were to look into a crystal ball 25, 30 years down the road, what do you see the natural gas industry looking like? What changes between now and then that you foresee in the future?
I think we're going to be in more of the power generation side. I know there's a lot of folks out there that call for natural gas just to go away, shut all the pipelines off. But you have to have a resource in order to make electricity. What drives the turbines, and I think we will see that wind and solar are very vital resources. Also, water is a great resource for powering, so we're trying to do more on that side as well. But I think we also have to look at this and say there will be some need for natural gas, whether it be generating the power itself, running the turbines to generate electricity, which we do right now. A lot of that years ago was done either by oil or by coal. Those power plants, very tough emissions that were coming off of it. So we're broken back from that, and we're now using more natural gas. It's a cleaner resource, but that also we're trying to find ways to improve that side and the carbon emissions that go out from it. But then also we will introduce, as I said, when I first started in the industry, oil was a competitor to us. Now a lot of this we're working together as energy companies, and I do see that down the road, wind and solar will find their place into the energy world with us, and it will all, you'll see some of the big companies that are out there, the Shells, Exxon Mobils, all buy into it and say, okay, I need to have that resource as part of our resources too, and drive the entire production from that side.
So it's gonna...
and it will expand. It will expand things into homes where you're going to be putting solar into homes and driving electric vehicles and all good things that will come from it. But there's still a piece of this that natural gas is going to have its home at the end of the day, and how we use the resource.
So less about trying to eliminate one resource and more about companies becoming multifaceted and multiple resources. Yeah,
exactly.
I know we had a big push
we would
around
bang
here.
head to head why oil over gas all the time, and now it becomes the same discussion, right? And you find where the right combinations are.
Yeah, I know Doug had sent me an article about blending hydrogen with natural gas, and that there might be a trend in that direction. So why? Like, what's driving that, or why would that be beneficial?
There's less of a carbon footprint with hydrogen. And it's interesting, no different than if you're in the medical side, the pharmaceutical side. They've been doing this in Europe for a number of years. So Europe has been blending hydrogen for probably 10, 15 years. It's a very good way to do things. It is something that we've been a little slower to adopt into our energy policies here, but because of the need to make these improvements that we're all being challenged to make, we will start to see this happening. We're working on several projects right now. One of the things with hydrogen, it's natural gas is lighter than air. Hydrogen is lighter than natural gas. So it's containment, number one. You got to make sure that this isn't seeping out of the pores of the pipe. And secondly, even just as simple as a natural gas meter, in a natural gas meter, you have a diaphragm and bellows that go back and forth. Hydrogen is lighter, so you don't have that power, if you would, to push those bellows, which means you're really not registering the gas as efficiently as possible. So we're looking as an industry at a blend on what is that right blended mix that will have enough viscosity, if you would, to move the bellows and make the natural gas meters run, and also be able to introduce the hydrogen to get the efficiencies and what we're looking for a cleaner fuel source, if you would, at the end of the day. And that'll also mean that even some of the meters will change. And that's happened in Europe as well. Some of the ways that they do billing in Europe is no longer from the meter itself, which we always call the cash register of the company. They have package plans, almost like you work with your phone. So if you have a range, you might pay $25 a month for that plan. If you have a heating system, it's another $150. So you add on the appliances that you're utilizing the gas for, and then the meter becomes more of a secondary source, just as an audit function to kind of measure and make sure that your phone system does the same thing. You buy an unlimited plan, but they're still watching this and making sure that you're within certain confines of the billing parameters that are
Interesting.
out there. So I think we're going to see a lot of technology changes in the next 10 to 20 years that will all be centered around trying to bring this together, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's rather obvious that Wally is a lot smarter than I am because when he was explaining that stuff, there's about 6 words he said I didn't understand, and it wasn't your accent.
I got them all.
It wasn't your
It's
accent.
Boston. No, that's just the Boston
No,
side.
it wasn't your accent.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that is. That's really
It's
neat.
going to change a lot of things.
You know, you've mentioned a number of times just during the short conversation about the environment. Is the natural gas industry? I mean, is that a focal point of the natural gas industry? Is to help preserve the environment?
It has to be, and it is. Everything that we do, and it's like anything. You're out doing construction. We're in areas where we work with the transmission companies and the midstream companies working out in the shale areas. You're working in areas that nobody else is out in. It's very much in the woods. It's going through waterways. It's going through number of resources that are out there. So it touches nerves to a lot of folks, which is understandable. Why are you in my backyard? Why are we working this project here and in the area where there's endangered species and there's other things that we need to preserve? When we look at that, though, the environment and that end of it, we have some of probably the best environmental engineering schools in the country. Mm-hmm. We have some of the best environmentalists that are out there. So it's, again, business and culture, if you would, coming together. And you have to bring the two together and say, listen, we can do these projects, but we have to put resourceful and responsible policies in place, and people out working with the natural gas companies or anybody else. It could be the oil lines that are running pipeline, or there's a lot of resources that are run through pipelines that I don't think the communities necessarily see or saw years ago. Now it's becoming more predominant, but as we're doing it, there has to be a responsible piece to the environment as well, to make sure that even as we restore an area, it's coming back to its natural state.
Sure.
And as we intended for it. So as we get into some of our corrosion work that we do spend a fair amount of time in that end of it right there.
Yeah, you mentioned corrosion a few times. So it's my understanding that in your area, you're really big on inspection. And the utilities, there's a high focus on protecting themselves from fines or liability. And so what are some things, maybe even in terms of corrosion, that inspectors are looking for on a meter set? And why is it so important to protect from corrosion?
Well, that's a great question. A couple of things that we're charged with to inspect from the utility perspective, if you would, in the industry days. It's going out to look at atmospheric corrosion. So we want to make sure that piping network out there, number one, for safety, we're not creating leaks and leak paths that may be out there. As a metal product or an iron ore product, it's going to always try to go back to its natural state. So that's rust. And as rust, accumulates, you start to go through and you're breaking through the pipe. So we always want to make sure we have a good corrosion coating on any of the exposed areas. Likewise, we do the same process with some electrolysis for below grade. The second part is emissions. So one of the things that we're looking at right now is any type of carbon emission. So if you have a leak, whether it be out in the street or on a meter set, any type of leak is emitting natural gas back to atmosphere. And what's the impact of that on the ozone? So, these are little things that it might be as simple as changing the meter out. So we have the bypass meter technology. And why is that important? Because that little bit, as much as it's a contributor to time savings and not having to go in to change a meter and get into a customer's home, it's also not taking that meter out of service or letting the natural gas escape to atmosphere. So all this little stuff is things that, from a federal level, that the industry is being charged with to make improvements to, and every little bit counts, if you would, at the end of the day.
And I know one of the things that we're talking about lately is armor galv, and the application of armor galv as far as the coating or the bonding. What's your thoughts on the armor galv process and that new introduction?
I think the armor galv process, and for folks' understanding of it, it's taking that galvanic process and putting a bonded coating on that would stop, and it basically is a rust inhibitor, if you would, in stopping the process of the atmospheric corrosion. I think that's a great process and something that we need to improve on, continue to improve on with products like the 𝘈𝘧𝘵𝐿𝐴, so that we're not out doing as much maintenance work at the end of the day. As a college student, when I was there, that was one of our tasks, was to go out, and every meter set that was out there needed to be painted. So, you send a bunch of college students out with the little thing of Rust-Oleum and a paintbrush, and half of it's on the side of the building, and it's raining out and it's falling off. You can't do it in the winter in the snow. So there's got to be improvements. There's got to be improvements to that process, of which AY McDonald is working on. And as we do that, that should be something for the industry to look at and accept and say, hey, this is our contribution back in and helping the overall process to better itself, if you would.
So you mentioned bypass technology. I have to bring this up because a little birdie told me that there's some napkin story and some doodle, I'm guessing at a bar.
It is. And I go back to, you mentioned your time with Jim and James and the story of the cocktail napkins, right? And the bar napkins. And yes, in the good old days, back when the hair wasn't gray, we probably did a lot of work over cocktail napkins versus in engineering drawings. So that's how I was trained, and that's how I like to work. But the bypass technology, and something that, if you would kind of coin it, but you always want to leave what you're doing better, right? And how the bypass technology came about was, we had just started the company in 2004. It was 2000, probably the end of that year, and I was at a Society of Gas Operators meeting, a SOGO meeting in New York City, and asked the question to one of the directors at Keyspan at the time, now National Grid. Instead of, hey, Wally, what are you doing now? I understand you started a new company. And my response back through it was, instead of me coming in and trying to sell you something that you don't need, how about you tell me what you need? And if I can produce it and we can do it right, it's a win-win. So the answer that came back right away is, we have in Massachusetts, we have to change the meters out every 7 years, regardless. Part of our policy, our plan for the state of Massachusetts to operate is we have to change meters out, and we're buying up all these companies, and I just don't have enough workforce to do this. How can you help me? So we came back and we started with the cocktail napkin, and called Tony Althouse at the time. And I said, Tony, we have to come up with a technology that we can change meters out without ever having to interrupt the customer. Well, you can only imagine, knowing Tony, are you kidding me? No, Wally, they'll never go for this.
Yeah.
And we went back and forth, and we started with a very simple plan. Bunch of screw fittings, put them together, brought them back in. We worked hand in hand with the folks at Keyspan at the time, and tested and evaluated it. And now, as we know, very pleased to say that was kind of the launch to not only the bypass meter bars, but the valves and bypass technology that is getting adopted to more and more in the industry, as we know. So we've grown a very nice customer base since that time.
Yeah, that's innovation at its finest.
Absolutely.
Focus on their pain, solve their problem, win-win.
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah,
and I think somewhere around here, somebody still has the cocktail.
I'm sure they do.
Oh, I wish I had a picture of that.
And just as a point of reference, in case people don't know, Tony Althouse was our national sales manager in the natural gas.
Yeah.
Back when
many years.
Not many, because that was that Wally was there, and he hasn't been there that long. 38 years. Come on, that's not that long. So, one of the final questions I have, and 38 years is a long time to spend in an industry. What is it about the natural gas industry that keeps you coming back? That wants you to be in that industry?
Well, when I started to work at the gas company as a college student, and then came on full time, one of the things that was very clear, that the first boss I went to work for retired with 53 and a half years of service. And that was taking 3 years out to go to the military. Most of the people had greater than 40 years. So I kind of looked at this and said, there's some longevity here. Obviously, at the time, searching for where's my career going to go? What am I going to do? So there was some longevity and some had to be something good. People were sticking around 40, 50 years. There had to be something good going on. But the second part was the community. And we had a senior vice president who was a firm believer in, at the time I was working in the customer service area and taking calls for, I might have a leak or water heater's out, the heat's out. But if Mrs. Jones called from down the street and said, I've got a water leak or my electricity's out, whatever the case may be, we were really instructed, you go there and you take care, make everything safe and take care of that person. And the idea behind that was that we were part of the community. If we want to be in good graces with the customers as we go out and do road opening permits and we do work in the community, doing our work in the community, the more we can embrace them and help them and be part of that was something that was very important to the company. Back then, we were traded on the American Stock Exchange, not the New York Stock Exchange. That obviously, when we go to that you want to ring that bell, you got to play a little bit harder. So we were a nice, slow, steady stock on the new American Stock Exchange. But really being in that side of it, and family business for my parents were in the banking industry, is community banking. And always, Dad was always involved with the local community bank. So I just found some solace in that and said, we're really doing something good. We're providing a service, which is an energy service to the customers. But it was also part of the community, and it just kind of grew from there.
Great.
Yeah, I love that. We hear that a lot in all the industries that we serve, that service-minded type of perspective. Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything AY does, whether it be on the water side and the pump side, we're always working in the community, right? We may not physically be there ourselves, but products and services are always in the community, and it's a great representation as to what we do and how it kind of pays into the overall picture.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, Wally, that's really all we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
You're
thanks,
always
Wally.
so fun to talk to.
Certainly.
I love
Thank
your background. I'm gonna
Greatly appreciate it.
I'm gonna have to send you some medieval token.
Yeah. Well, not the full body armor though, because we still want you to be your wife to be okay
married.
with everything. I don't want to be the reason for that. Okay.
Really?
Well, thanks so much, Wally, for sharing all your insights. We appreciate it. For those of you listening or watching, you can go to 𝐂𝐻_McDonald.com or visit our socials, or send ideas to us for future podcasts at 𝐂𝐻_McDonald. Nope.
You screwed that up. Yes, you see, it's not that. See, well, it's not that easy. I let her go, and I let her. I saw it coming.
Doug, I thought that was your job to screw that up.
No,
Come on, Kelly.
No,
feel your beady little eyes boring down on me.
I was just
Sweating.
like, yep. I was like, I knew she would. Right? There's a certain time I'm like, nope, she doesn't have it. She doesn't have it.
Once
And
you screw it up
bam.
once, then it's all downhill.
Yep,
from
downhill
there.
from here. Yeah, just in case everybody out there, it's actually AY After Hours at 𝐂𝐻_McDonald.com.
Well done.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks, Wally.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.